The Haunting of Hollow Creek. Prologue. The moon hung low in the sky over Hollow Creek, casting long shadows that danced across the sleepy town. On the outskirts, nestled among gnarled trees and overgrown weeds, stood the decrepit Wixxwood Mansion. Its once grand facade now lay in ruin, windows shattered and the paint peeling away like dead skin. Aurora Patterson, a young woman of 25, made her way through the dense fog that clung to the ground. She glanced over her shoulder, her heart pounding in her chest. The stories she had heard about the mansion echoed in her mind. Whispers of ghosts, curses, and things far worse. But Aurora was determined. Her best friend Breslin had disappeared 2 nights ago, and this was the last place she had been seen. As Aurora approached the mansion's front door, it creaked open, inviting her in with an eerie groan. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, her flashlight casting feeble beams into the darkness. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and every sound seemed amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the rustle of leaves outside, the distant drip of water. She navigated through the labyrinth of rooms, each one more oppressive than the last. In the drawing room, old portraits lined the walls, their subjects staring down at her with hollow eyes. She felt their gaze following her as she moved, a cold shiver running down her spine. Aurora. The whisper was barely audible, yet it froze her in her tracks. She spun around, her flashlight slicing through the dark. No one was there. The whisper came again, louder this time, more insistent. Aurora, help me. Her breath caught in her throat as she followed the voice, leading her deeper into the mansion. It led her to a grand staircase, its steps rotting and unstable. She climbed cautiously, each step a painful creak that echoed through the empty halls. At the top, she found a room bathed in an unnatural glow. The door was ajar, and she pushed it open to reveal a small, dusty attic. In the center of the room was an old radio, crackling with static. As she approached, the static gave way to a voice. Breslin's voice. Aurora, you have to leave. It's not safe here. They're coming for you. Before she could react, the radio burst into flames, the heat scorching her skin. She stumbled back, her flashlight clattering to the floor. The whispers grew louder, filling the room with a cacophony of voices, each one more desperate and malevolent than the last. In a panic, Aurora fled the attic, racing down the stairs and out of the mansion. She didn't stop until she had reached the safety of her car, her heart pounding and her mind racing. As she drove away, she glanced in the rearview mirror, catching one last glimpse of the mansion. The front door slowly creaked shut, and the whispers faded into the night. The Haunting of Hollow Creek. Chapter 1. The Return. Detective Becker Carterson leaned against his car, staring at the sign welcoming him back to Hollow Creek. The town had hardly changed in the decade since he'd left, but it felt different now, shrouded in an air of foreboding. He rubbed his temples, trying to ward off the headache that had been building since he'd received the call. Becker, we need you, Chief Cooper had said. Another girl's gone missing. It's just like before. Just like before. The words echoed in his mind, bringing back memories he tried so hard to forget. His sister, Liliana, had vanished without a trace one summer night, her case remaining unsolved despite all his efforts. The guilt and grief had driven him away from Hollow Creek. But now, he was back, and the past seemed to be repeating itself. As Becker drove through the familiar streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Paranoia, he told himself. This town gets under your skin. He pulled up to the police station, taking a deep breath before stepping out of the car. Inside, the station was bustling with activity. Officers hurried back and forth, phones rang incessantly, and the tension was palpable. Chief Cooper, a grizzled man in his 60s, spotted Becker and waved him over. Good to see you, Becker, Cooper said, extending a hand. I wish it were under better circumstances. Me too, Becker replied, shaking his hand. What do we have? Cooper led him to a conference room where a large map of Hollow Creek was pinned to the wall, marked with various locations. Aurora Patterson, 25, last seen near Wixxwood Mansion 2 nights ago. Her car was found abandoned on the side of the road. We've searched the area, but there's no sign of her. Becker's eyes narrowed as he looked at the map. Wixxwood Mansion? That place has been abandoned for years. Yeah, and it's got a reputation, Kruger said grimly. People say it's cursed. Ghost stories, strange noise, disappearances. But we need to find her, Becker. We can't let this happen again. Becker nodded, his jaw set. I'll head to the mansion and take a look. Maybe there's something we missed. As he made his way to the outskirts of town, memories of his childhood in Hollow Creek flooded back. The laughter, the games, the safety he'd once felt, all of it overshadowed by the night Liliana disappeared. Wixxwood Mansion loomed ahead, its silhouette dark and foreboding against the twilight sky. Becker parked his car and approached cautiously, his flashlight cutting through the gathering darkness. The air was still, unnervingly so, as if the mansion itself were holding its breath. The front door was ajar, just as it had been in the police photos. He pushed it open, the hinges protesting with a loud creak. Inside, the mansion was even more decayed than he'd imagined. Dust coated every surface, and the air was thick with the smell of rot. Becker's flashlight beam swept across the room, illuminating old furniture, broken glass, and peeling wallpaper. He moved methodically, searching for any clue, any sign that Aurora had been there. As he reached the drawing room, the hair on the back of his neck stood up. He felt it again, that sensation of being watched. "Aurora," he called out, his voice echoing in the empty house. "Aurora, are you there?" There was no answer, only the oppressive silence pressing in around him. He continued his search, moving deeper into the mansion. As he reached the grand staircase, he hesitated. The old wood looked unstable, but he had to check every corner. He climbed carefully, each step groaning under his weight. At the top, he found a series of bedrooms, each one more dilapidated than the last. In the final room, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A message scrawled on the wall in what looked like blood. "Help me." Becker's heart raced as he took a step closer. The message was fresh. Aurora had been here, and she was in danger. Determined to find her, he pressed on, the whispers from his past growing louder with every step. The Haunting of Hollow Creek, Chapter 2, The Old Mansion. The next morning, Becker returned to the Wixxwood Mansion, determined to uncover what had happened to Aurora. He had spent the night combing through old case files and historical records, searching for anything that might provide a clue. The mansion had a dark history, and he needed to understand it if he was going to solve this case. As he approached the mansion, the sun barely pierced the thick canopy of trees surrounding the property. The air was cool and damp, and the silence was almost tangible. Becker pushed open the creaking front door and stepped inside, the familiar scent of decay assaulting his senses. He began his search methodically, room by room. In the drawing room, he found old portraits of the Wixxwood family. They stared down at him with lifeless eyes, their expressions stern and foreboding. He examined each one carefully, noting the dates and names. The family had been prominent in the late 1800s, but their wealth had dwindled rapidly after a series of mysterious deaths and disappearances. Moving on, Becker explored the kitchen and dining room, both filled with rotting furniture and broken dishes. He found nothing of interest until he reached the study. There, among the scattered papers and dusty books, he discovered an old journal. The leather cover was cracked and faded, and the pages were brittle with age. Becker carefully opened the journal and began to read. It belonged to Reginald Wixxwood, patriarch of the family. The entries started innocuously enough, detailing daily life and business dealings, but as he read further, the tone grew darker, more desperate. June 3rd, 1897. Something is wrong. Matilda has been acting strangely, speaking in tongues and claiming to see spirits. The doctor says it is hysteria, but I fear it is something more. June 12th, 1897. Matilda is dead. The doctor could not save her. I fear she was possessed by some malevolent force. The house feels different now, colder, as if the very walls are alive. August 23rd, 1897. I have found strange symbols carved into the basement walls. I do not know their meaning, but they fill me with dread. I must find a way to cleanse this house of its darkness. Becker felt a chill run down his spine as he read the final entry. It was dated September 15th, 1897, the day Reginald Wixxwood disappeared. I have discovered the source of the evil. It is an ancient spirit bound to this house by a dark ritual. I will confront it tonight, and if I do not return, let this journal serve as a warning. The Wixxwood Mansion is cursed, and it will claim all who enter. Becker closed the journal, his mind racing. He needed to find the basement and see those symbols for himself. He left the study and continued his search, finally locating a narrow door hidden behind a tapestry. It led to a steep staircase descending into darkness. Taking a deep breath, Becker began his descent, his flashlight flickering as he moved deeper into the bowels of the mansion. The air grew colder, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the sound of his footsteps echoing off the stone walls. At the bottom of the stairs, he found a large, cavernous room. The walls were covered in strange symbols, just as Reginald Wixxwood had described. They glowed faintly in the darkness, casting eerie shadows across the floor. In the center of the room was an altar, and on it lay a book bound in what looked like human skin. Becker approached cautiously, his heart pounding. The book radiated a malevolent energy, and he could feel the air crackling with power. He opened it, revealing pages filled with cryptic runes and incantations. As he read, he realized it was a grimoire, a book of dark magic used to summon and bind spirits. He needed help. This was beyond anything he had ever encountered before. He closed the grimoire and took a few photos of the symbols on the altar before making his way back upstairs. He had to find someone who could decipher the runes and help him understand the ritual that had bound the spirit to the mansion. As he stepped out of the mansion into the daylight, he pulled out his phone and called Luna, the local historian. She had always been interested in the town's dark past, and if anyone could help him, it was her. "Luna, it's Becker," he said when she answered. "I need your help. Meet me at the mansion. There's something you need to see." The Haunting of Hollow Creek. Chapter 3. Uncovering Secrets. Luna Mintz arrived at the Wixxwood Mansion just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the overgrown grounds. She had known Becker for years, and his call had filled her with a mix of excitement and dread. The mansion had always intrigued her, but she had never dared to explore it alone. Becker was waiting for her at the front entrance. "Thanks for coming, Luna," he said, his expression grim. "I found something you need to see." "Lead the way," Luna replied, her curiosity piqued. They entered the mansion, the darkness inside even more oppressive as night fell. Becker led her to the study and showed her the journal and the photos he had taken of the symbols and the grimoire in the basement. Luna's eyes widened as she examined the images. These symbols, they're ancient. Some of them are used in rituals to summon and bind spirits. This is serious, Becker. Whoever performed this ritual knew what they were doing. "I need to know more about this spirit," Becker said, "why it's here and how we can get rid of it." Luna nodded. "There's a lot of local folklore about the Wixxwood family. Some of it's just ghost stories, but there are always grains of truth. Let me do some research. I'll see what I can find." As Luna left to begin her research, Becker continued his investigation of the mansion. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, and the whispers seemed to follow him wherever he went. He spent the next few hours exploring the rooms he hadn't seen yet, searching for any additional clues. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, he found a dusty old trunk filled with letters and photographs. The letters were mostly mundane, but one caught his eye. It was from Reginald Wixxwood to a man named Elias Thorpe, dated just a few days before his disappearance. "Dear Elias," it read, "I have discovered the source of the curse that plagues our family. The spirit is ancient and powerful, bound to this house by a dark ritual. I fear that if I cannot stop it, our lineage will be doomed. I have enclosed my findings and beg for your assistance. Please hurry." Becker's heart raced as he read the letter. Elias Thorpe had been a renowned occultist in the late 1800s, known for his expertise in dealing with malevolent spirits. If Reginald Wixxwood had reached out to him, it meant he had been desperate. He carefully placed the letter in his bag and continued searching. As he moved through the house, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. He felt a cold presence behind him and spun around. But there was nothing there. Determined to push through the fear, Becker made his way to the basement. He needed to understand the symbols and the ritual if he was going to find a way to banish the spirit. As he studied the walls, the symbols seemed to writhe and twist, almost as if they were alive. Hours passed and Becker's frustration grew. The symbols were complex, and without Luna's expertise, he was at a loss. Just as he was about to give up, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Luna. "I found something. Meet me at the library in an hour." Relieved, Becker left the mansion and drove to the Hollow Creek Library. Luna was waiting for him in the archives section, surrounded by old books and documents. I found references to a dark ritual performed by the Wixxwood family in the late 1800s, Luna said, handing Becker a stack of papers. It was supposed to summon a spirit to grant them power and wealth, but something went wrong. The spirit was bound to the mansion, and it's been tormenting anyone who enters ever since. Can we break the ritual? Becker asked, his voice tense. Luna nodded. There's a counter-ritual described in these texts. It's risky, but it might work. We'll need to gather some specific items and perform the ritual at the mansion. Let's do it, Becker said. We don't have much time. Aurora's still out there, and who knows what that spirit is doing to her. Together they made a list of the items they needed and split up to gather them. The clock was ticking, and every moment they wasted was a moment Aurora could be in mortal danger. The Haunting of Hollow Creek, Chapter 4. The Haunting Begins. As the moon rose over Hollow Creek, Becker and Luna returned to the Wixxwood Mansion, their arms laden with the items required for the counter-ritual. The mansion loomed ominously in the darkness, its windows like empty eyes watching their every move. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. The silence was broken only by the creak of the floorboards under their feet and the distant rustle of leaves outside. Becker felt a chill run down his spine as they made their way to the basement, where the symbols and altar awaited. Luna spread out the items on the floor: candles, salt, a silver dagger, and a piece of parchment inscribed with the counter-ritual. We need to place the candles at each corner of the room and draw a protective circle with the salt, she instructed. Becker nodded and began placing the candles while Luna carefully poured the salt in a wide circle around the altar. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the symbols seem to dance and writhe. With the preparations complete, Luna took a deep breath and began to read the incantation from the parchment. Her voice echoed in the cold, damp basement, each word dripping with ancient power. As she spoke, the symbols on the walls began to glow, their light growing brighter with each passing moment. Becker felt a pressure building in the room, as if the very air were vibrating with energy. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, filling his mind with a cacophony of voices. He struggled to focus, keeping his eyes on Luna as she continued the ritual. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and a cold wind whipped through the basement, extinguishing the candles. The room was plunged into darkness, and the whispers turned into wails of anguish. Becker's flashlight flickered, casting brief glimpses of the writhing symbols in the now animate shadows. "Luna, keep going," Becker shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. Luna's voice wavered but remained steady as she pressed on with the incantation. The symbols pulsed with a malevolent energy, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. Becker gripped the silver dagger tightly, ready to defend them if need be. With the final resonant word, Luna completed the incantation. For a moment, everything went still. The whispers ceased, and the oppressive darkness seemed to lift. Becker felt a glimmer of hope, thinking they had succeeded. But then, a low growl rumbled through the basement, and a figure materialized in the center of the circle. It was a tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes and a twisted, malevolent grin. His presence radiated a cold, dark energy that made Becker's blood run cold. "Fools," the spirit hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "You cannot banish me. I am bound to this place, and I will feed on your fear." Becker stepped forward, the dagger held out defensively. "We're not afraid of you," he said, though his heart was pounding. The spirit laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Becker's spine. "You will be." In a flash, the spirit lunged at them, and Becker swung the dagger. It passed through the spirit, but the contact seemed to weaken it momentarily. Luna, thinking quickly, grabbed the grimoire from the altar and began to read aloud from it, her voice strong and determined. The spirit recoiled, its form flickering and distorting. Becker continued to fend it off with the dagger, each strike making it weaker. As Luna's voice rose in a crescendo, the spirit let out a final ear-piercing shriek and vanished in a burst of light. The basement fell silent once more, and Becker and Luna collapsed to the floor, exhausted but victorious. The symbols on the walls faded, and the oppressive energy lifted, leaving only the faint glow of the candles. "We did it," Becker said. "We actually did it." Luna nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. "But we're not done yet. We still need to find Aurora." They made their way back upstairs, the mansion feeling less oppressive now that the spirit was gone. In one of the rooms, they found Aurora, unconscious but alive. Becker picked her up gently, relief washing over him. As they left the mansion, the first rays of dawn began to break over the horizon. Hollow Creek was still and silent, but for the first time in years, felt like the town could finally heal. The Haunting of Hollow Creek, Chapter 5, Allies and Enemies. Aurora stirred as they carried her to Becker's car, her eyelids fluttering open. She looked disoriented but relieved to see Becker and Luna. "What happened?" she asked, her voice weak. "You're safe now," Becker reassured her. "We found you just in time." They drove back to town in silence, the weight of their ordeal hanging heavily in the air. Once they reached the Hollow Creek Hospital, Aurora was admitted for observation, and Becker and Luna sat in the waiting room, exhaustion etched on their faces. "We need to figure out who performed that ritual," Becker said, breaking the silence. "Someone bound that spirit to the mansion, and they could still be out there." Luna nodded. "I'll dig deeper into the Wixxwood family history. There must be more clues in the town records or old newspapers." The next few days were a blur of research and interviews. Luna spent hours in the library poring over historical documents, while Becker questioned the townspeople about any unusual activities or suspicious individuals. They learned that Reginald Wixxwood had a younger brother, Winston, who had vanished shortly after Reginald's disappearance. Winston was obsessed with the occult, Luna explained, showing Becker an old photograph of the Wixxwood brothers. He might have been the one who performed the ritual. Becker stared at the photograph, a plan forming in his mind. If Winston's still alive, he could be the key to understanding what happened. We need to find out where he went. Their search led them to an old, crumbling house on the outskirts of town. It had been abandoned for years, but records indicated that Winston had lived there after Reginald's disappearance. The house was in a state of disrepair, with broken windows and overgrown weeds choking the yard. Inside, they found a treasure trove of occult artifacts and books. Luna's eyes widened as she examined the collection. "This is incredible! Winston was deeply involved in dark magic." Among the dusty tomes and strange relics, they discovered a journal that confirmed their suspicions. Winston had indeed performed the ritual to summon the spirit, hoping to gain its power. But something had gone wrong, and the spirit had turned on him, binding itself to the mansion. "There's more," Luna said, her voice trembling as she read the final entries. "Winston didn't just disappear. He was driven mad by the spirit's influence. He became a recluse, hiding in the shadows, and he might still be alive." Becker felt a chill run down his spine. If he's still out there, we need to find him. He might have answers, or be a danger to others. Their search for Winston led them to an old abandoned mine on the outskirts of town, a place long rumored to be haunted. Becker and Luna approached the entrance cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air was damp and cold, and the sound of dripping water echoed through the tunnels. As they ventured deeper into the mine, they heard whispers, faint but growing louder with each step. The walls seemed to close in around them, the oppressive darkness pressing down on their shoulders. Becker's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the wall. "Becker, look," Luna whispered, pointing to a series of symbols carved into the rock. They were similar to the ones they had seen in the mansion, and their presence filled Becker with a sense of dread. They followed the symbols, the whispers growing louder, until they reached a large cavern. In the center of the cavern was a makeshift altar, and hunched over it was a figure, muttering to himself. "Winston Wixxwood?" Becker called out, his voice echoing through the cavern. The figure turned, revealing a gaunt, haggard man with wild eyes. "You should not have come here," he hissed, his voice filled with madness. "The spirit is mine to control." Luna stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Winston, the spirit has been banished. It's over. You don't have to live like this anymore." Winston let out a maniacal laugh. "Banished? You fools. The spirit is bound to me. As long as I live, it will never be free." Becker and Luna exchanged a worried glance. "We need to help him," Becker said quietly, "but we also need to make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else." As they approached, Winston suddenly lunged at them, his eyes blazing with fury. Becker struggled to subdue him, but Winston's strength was fueled by his madness. Luna grabbed the silver dagger from her bag, holding it out defensively. "Stay back," she warned, her voice shaking. In the chaos, the dagger slipped from her hand, skittering across the floor. Winston's eyes fixed on it, and he lunged for the weapon. Becker tackled him, the two men grappling on the stone floor. Luna grabbed the dagger and, with a desperate cry, plunged it into Winston's side. Winston let out a guttural scream, his body convulsing as the spirit's hold on him was broken. He collapsed to the ground, his eyes glazing over as the life drained from him. The cavern fell silent, the oppressive energy lifting. Becker and Luna stood over Winston's lifeless body, their breathing heavy. "It's over," Becker said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and sorrow. "The spirit is finally free." They left the mine, the last rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. Hollow Creek was quiet and still, but a sense of peace had settled over the town. The darkness that had plagued it for so long was finally gone, and Becker and Luna knew that they had done the right thing. But as they walked back to their car, Becker couldn't shake the feeling that their work wasn't finished. There were still questions to be answered, and the shadows of the past had a way of lingering. For now, though, they could rest. The haunted whispers were silenced, and Hollow Creek could begin to heal. The Haunting of Hollow Creek, Chapter 6, Unveiling the Truth. The next few days passed in a blur for Becker and Luna as they dealt with the aftermath of their encounter with Winston Wixxwood. The authorities were skeptical of their story, but the evidence in the mansion and the mine was undeniable. The town of Hollow Creek was finally free of the spirit that had haunted it for so long. Aurora recovered quickly, and though she had no memory of her ordeal, she was grateful to Becker and Luna for saving her. As the town began to heal, Becker found himself restless, unable to shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Becker sat on his porch sipping a cup of coffee. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Luna, holding a stack of papers. "I've been going through more of the Wixxwood family history," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "I think I found something important." Becker invited her in, and they spread the papers out on the kitchen table. Luna pointed to an old yellow document. "This is a deed to a piece of land just outside of town. It belonged to Reginald Wixxwood, but it's never been mentioned in any of the records we've found." "What do you think it means?" Becker asked, leaning forward. "I'm not sure, but I think it's worth investigating," Luna replied. "There might be something there that explains why the Wixxwood family got involved in dark magic in the first place." Following morning, Becker and Luna drove to the location indicated on the deed. It was a remote area, overgrown with trees and thick underbrush. They parked the car and hiked through the dense forest, guided by the coordinates on the document. After what felt like hours of searching, they stumbled upon the remnants of an old stone building, half buried in the undergrowth. It looked like a small chapel, its walls covered in moss and ivy. "This must be it," Luna said, her voice hushed with awe. They carefully approached the cabin, pushing open the creaking door. Inside, the air was stale and filled with the smell of decay. Dust motes floated in the beams of sunlight that filtered through the gaps in the walls. The cabin was small, with a single room containing a rickety table, a few chairs, and an old iron stove. Becker began to search the room, examining the furniture and floorboards for any hidden compartment. Luna rifled through the remaining items on the shelves, finding little more than old rusted tools and broken pottery. Just as they were about to give up, Becker noticed something odd about the floorboards in one corner of the room. "These boards look different," he said, crouching down to inspect them. "Think there's something under here." Luna joined him, and together they pried up the loose floorboards. Beneath them, they found a small hidden compartment. Inside was a metal box covered in dust and cobwebs. Becker carefully lifted it out and placed it on the table. With a sense of anticipation, they opened the box. Inside, they found a collection of old documents, photographs, and a leather-bound journal. Luna picked up the journal and began to read, her eyes widening as she skimmed the pages. "This journal belonged to Reginald Wixxwood," she said, her voice filled with awe. "It details his experiments with dark magic and the rituals he performed." Becker leaned over to read with her, the words on the pages revealing a chilling tale. Reginald had discovered an ancient text that spoke of summoning spirits to gain power and wealth. Desperate to save his family's dwindling fortune, he had performed the ritual that ultimately bound the spirit to the mansion. But there was more. The journal also spoke of a hidden treasure, buried somewhere on the property, that Reginald believed would bring unimaginable wealth to whoever found it. The location of the treasure was described in a series of cryptic clues and riddles. This could be why Winston was so obsessed, Becker said, his mind racing. He must have been trying to find the treasure, hoping it would give him the power he sought. Luna nodded. But it also means there might be others looking for it. We need to solve these clues before someone else does. They spent the rest of the day deciphering the riddles and following the clues laid out in the journal. Each step took them deeper into the history of the Wixxwood family and the dark secrets they had tried to hide. The final clue led them to a secluded spot near the cabin, where an ancient oak tree stood, its gnarled roots twisting into the earth. Using the descriptions in the journal, they dug at the base of the tree. After what felt like hours, their shovels struck something solid. With renewed energy, they unearthed a small, ornately carved chest. Inside, they found a collection of gold coins, jewels, and ancient artifacts, all glittering in the fading light of the setting sun. "We did it," Luna said, her voice filled with wonder. "We found the Wixxwood treasure." Becker smiled, but his expression was somber. "We need to make sure this stays out of the wrong hands. This treasure has caused enough pain and suffering." They carefully reburied the chest, marking the spot so they could return later with proper authorities. As they made their way back to the car, Becker and Luna felt a sense of closure. The dark legacy of the Wixxwood family had finally been uncovered. The town of Hollow Creek could begin to heal. But as they left the clearing, neither of them noticed the shadowy figure watching them from the edge of the forest, its eyes glinting with malevolent intent. The Haunting of Hollow Creek, Chapter 7, Shadows of the Past. Days passed since Becker and Luna unearthed the Wixxwood treasure. The discovery had brought a mix of relief and unease. While they were glad to have solved the mystery, they couldn't shake the feeling that someone else knew about the treasure and was watching them. Becker kept his senses sharp, always on alert for any sign of trouble. Meanwhile, Luna delved deeper into the Wixxwood family history, searching for clues that might shed light on their mysterious observer. One evening as Becker was closing up his office, he received a call from Luna. Her voice was urgent. "Becker, I found something. Meet me at the library." Becker hurried to the Hollow Creek Library where Luna was waiting for him in the dimly lit archive section. She had spread out several old books and documents on the table. "I've been going through more records," Luna explained, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I found mentions of a secret society that was active in Hollow Creek in the late 1800s. They were rumored to be involved in occult practices and had connections to powerful families like the Wixxwoods." Becker leaned closer, scanning the document. "Do you think this society is still around? Could they be connected to whoever we think is watching us?" "It's possible," Luna replied. "I found references to a hidden meeting place, but it's described in vague terms. We need to figure out where it is and what they're up to." They spent hours poring over the old text, searching for any clue that could lead them to the secret society's lair. Finally, they came across a cryptic map tucked into the pages of an ancient tome. It depicted a series of landmarks around Hollow Creek, each marked with strange symbols. "This map must lead to their meeting place," Becker said, studying the symbols intently. "But we'll need to decipher them to figure out where to go." With renewed determination, Becker and Luna set out to decode the map. They visited each landmark, comparing them to the symbols on the map and searching for hidden meanings. As they pieced together the clues, a pattern emerged, leading them deeper into the heart of the forest. One rainy afternoon, they arrived at the final landmark, an old stone circle hidden deep in the woods. The air was heavy with mist, and the trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels. In the center of the circle, a weathered stone pillar stood, covered in ancient carvings. "This must be it," Luna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The secret society's meeting place." They approached cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth. As they drew closer to the stone pillar, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, cloaked figure with piercing eyes. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure said, their voice low and menacing. Becker and Luna exchanged a glance, their hearts racing. "Who are you?" Becker demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face hidden beneath a hood. "We are the keepers of the veil," they said, "guardians of ancient secrets and protectors of the balance." Luna's eyes widened in recognition. "The keepers of the veil," she whispered. "I've read about them. They were believed to have disbanded over a century ago." The cloaked figure nodded solemnly. We never truly disbanded. We have watched over Hollow Creek, ensuring that the darkness does not consume it. Becker stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. What do you want with us? The keeper regarded them thoughtfully. You have unearthed secrets that should have remained buried, they said. The Wixxwood treasure holds great power and it must be protected. Luna spoke up, her voice steady. We didn't mean to cause harm. We only wanted to uncover the truth. The keeper regarded them for a long moment before speaking again. The treasure must be returned to its rightful place. It has caused enough suffering. Becker and Luna exchanged a glance, silently agreeing. We'll do whatever it takes, Becker said firmly, but we need your help. The keeper nodded, their expression unreadable beneath the hood. Follow me. They led Becker and Luna deeper into the forest, to a secluded clearing where ancient symbols were etched into the ground. In the center of the clearing, a stone altar stood, bathed in moonlight. This is where the treasure must be returned, the keeper said, their voice solemn. Becker and Luna placed their hands on the chest containing the Wixxwood treasure, feeling its weight and the power it held. With a sense of reverence, they laid it upon the altar. As they stepped back, the forest seemed to hold its breath. A soft breeze stirred the leaves overhead, and the symbols on the ground glowed faintly in response. The air shimmered with unseen energy, and for a fleeting moment, Becker thought he saw the figure of Reginald Wixxwood among the trees, his expression filled with relief. When the light faded, the treasure was gone, leaving only the stone altar behind. Becker and Luna turned to the keeper, their hearts heavy, but knowing that they had done the right thing. What happens now? Luna asked quietly. The keeper regarded them with a hint of sadness. The secrets of the Wixxwood family will remain hidden, as they should be. But remember this, some secrets are best left undisturbed. With those words, the keeper disappeared into the shadows, leaving Becker and Luna alone in the clearing. They stood in silence for a long moment, reflecting on what they had uncovered and the choices they had made. As they made their way back to Hollow Creek, the weight of the past seemed to lift from their shoulders. The town was quiet and still, the rain washing away the remnants of their journey. Becker and Luna knew that the keepers of the Vale would continue their watchful vigil, protecting Hollow Creek from the darkness that lurked just beyond the Vale. But for now, they could finally rest. The Haunting of Hollow Creek, Chapter 8, The Resolution. Weeks passed since their encounter with the keepers of the Vale. Becker and Luna returned to their normal lives, but Hollow Creek had changed. The town seemed lighter, as if a dark cloud had lifted, yet Becker couldn't shake the feeling that their journey wasn't quite over. One evening, as Becker was locking up his office, he received an unexpected visitor, Aurora. She looked more composed than the last time he had seen her, with a determined expression on her face. Becker, I need to talk to you, Aurora said, her voice steady. Becker invited her in and they sat in his office. Aurora took a deep breath before speaking. I'm haunted by that night. I can't remember anything that happened after I left. I know I left, but somehow I didn't. It doesn't make sense to me, and I needed to find some answers. So I've been doing some research on my own about the Wixxwoods. Becker nodded, listening intently. I found out that Reginald Wixxwood wasn't just obsessed with power, Aurora continued. He was desperate to save his family from ruin. The treasure wasn't just about wealth. It was a last resort to protect his loved ones. Becker frowned, realizing the depth of Reginald's desperation. But it brought so much pain and suffering, he said quietly. Yes, but it also brought closure, Aurora replied. With the treasure returned, the darkness that plagued Hollow Creek has finally been put to rest. Becker thought about everything that they had been through, the rituals, the spirits, and the secrets buried in the past. Do you think we did the right thing, he asked, his voice uncertain. Aurora met his gaze with unwavering certainty. Yes, Becker, we may never fully understand the mysteries of the Wixxwood family, but we helped bring peace to this town. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey finally settling on Becker's shoulders. What now? He asked, looking at Aurora. I'm going to leave Hollow Creek, Aurora said. Start fresh somewhere new. This experience has been too much for me here, and I want a chance to start over. Go to a new place without the reminders of what happened to me and everything we went through. But I wanted to thank you, Becker, for everything you've done. Becker nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. Thank you, Aurora. You've been through so much. As Aurora stood to leave, Becker walked her to the door. Take care of yourself out there, he said, his voice filled with genuine concern. I will, Aurora replied with a small smile. And you take care too, Becker. With a final nod, Aurora walked out into the night. Becker watched her go, feeling a sense of closure settle over him. Hollow Creek would always hold secrets, but he knew that they had played a part in bringing light to the darkness. The Haunting of Hollow Creek. Epilogue. Echoes of Hollow Creek. Months had passed since Aurora left Hollow Creek. Becker and Luna continued their lives, each pursuing their own paths but forever connected by the events that had unfolded in their small town. Hollow Creek had returned to a semblance of normalcy. The rumors of spirits and dark magic faded into whispers, eventually becoming distant memories. The Wixxwood Mansion stood silent and empty, its secrets buried with the past. One crisp autumn afternoon, Becker found himself walking through the town square. The leaves crunched beneath his feet, and the air was tinged with the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. As he passed the local bookstore, a familiar face caught his eye. Luna, browsing through a stack of old books. "Luna!" Becker called out, a smile spreading across his face. Luna looked up, her face lighting up with recognition. "Becker!" she exclaimed, setting down the book she was holding and walking over to him. "It's good to see you," Becker said, embracing her warmly. "What have you been up to?" Luna glanced back at the bookstore with a fond smile. "It's doing some research. You know me." Becker chuckled, always digging for answers. They walked together through the quiet streets of Hollow Creek, catching up on their lives and reminiscing about their adventure. Despite the hardships they had faced, they both felt a sense of peace knowing they had played a part in bringing closure to the town. As they reached the edge of town, Luna stopped and turned to Becker, her expression serious yet hopeful. "Do you ever wonder what happened to the keepers of the Vale?" she asked. Becker nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes. They seem to have a deep connection to Hollow Creek." "They were guardians," Luna mused, "protectors of the balance between light and darkness." "They must have been watching over us," Becker said quietly, "guiding us toward the right path." Luna smiled, a sparkle of curiosity in her eyes. "Maybe one day we'll uncover more of Hollow Creek's mysteries." "Maybe," Becker agreed, looking out over the tranquil town they both called home. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the landscape, Becker and Luna continued their walk, knowing that the echoes of Hollow Creek would linger in their hearts forever.